The mystique of the polar region is unlike anywhere else on Earth. They are rugged, ice-filled, and cold, the frigid zones, yet they draw people to them with their breathtaking beauty. Hues of bright blue and white all around, the most peaceful places on Earth. Eerily quiet until you tune into their unique rhythm. These are the places where true explorers go, seeking that once-in-a-lifetime experience. Come with me to discover the remarkable polar regions of the Arctic and Antarctica.
I'm Denella Ri'chard. I've spent the last 20 plus years of my life traveling the world. I've lived as an expat in Europe and worked for world-renowned travel companies. Now, since everything we know about travel has changed, I invite you to come along with me and rediscover the world. Welcome to the show. This week, we're venturing off to the most remote and unexplored regions of the world, the polar regions. That's right, the Arctic and Antarctica. And like many of you, I've never been there. So I'm excited to learn more about the lands where the explorers go.
There's a moment during every polar voyage when everything stands still. When the beauty and the magic of the remote polar landscape crystallizes into one memory that will last forever. As the leader in polar adventures for 30 years, Quark Expeditions creates life-changing polar memories no one else can.
My guest today is from Quark Expeditions, a small ship adventure expedition company that specializes in voyages to the rugged and rough polar regions. Alex McNeil, he'll tell us a bit about the differences between visiting the Arctic and Antarctica and how to choose which adventure is best for you.
I'm Alex McNeil, and I'm the Director of Expedition Innovation and Experience at Quark Expeditions. I've come to this role after spending almost 2,000 days in the field as an expedition leader, guide, and presenter. And it's been a great passion for me exploring these areas over the past almost 20 years. So when choosing between the Arctic and Antarctic, there's a lot of different things to consider. I like to use the analogy that the Antarctic is more like sharp edges, where the Arctic's more soft edges. And the way that plays out is that the Antarctic is a place of extremes. Everything is more pronounced. You don't just see one penguin, you see 10,000 penguins. When it's windy, it's really windy. When it's sunny, the sun is just so warming. Whereas in the Arctic, it's more nuanced. You know, you have a slightly warmer temperature, less extreme weather. And when you have experiences with wildlife, they're really meaningful because you may have spent, an afternoon searching for polar bears and you finally find one, and there's this relationship between yourself, if you're in a Zodiac or on board the ship, and the polar bear approaching you. And sometimes you can get some really great experiences. Or if you're on shore looking at walrus, you have to approach them really quietly. So when you get into a good proximity, it's something that you've earned almost. Two of our most unique itineraries, I would have to say, starting with our new programs in the Canadian Arctic. Guests can fly in from Toronto, Canada, up to the territory of Nunavut and spend 7 to 12 days on board our new ship Ultramarine, exploring the Canadian Arctic archipelago in all of its glory. It's a really optimized program. We've partnered with local communities to develop it. And it'll really bring out the best of the Northwest Passage and the Canadian High Arctic. My favorite would probably have to be that South Greenland experience. And the reason why is that this year in August, I was actually able to go there. I was able to overcome all of the restrictions and the sensitivities around COVID, and taking the utmost precautions, we were able to visit South Greenland and spend almost a month there, again, walking in the footsteps of our future travelers, meeting our partners. And that experience just had such a profound impact on me emotionally, to see how passionate they were about the experiences that we were curating. and also to see the landscape. I'd visited South Greenland many times on trips that were not focused on that region, and to get an in-depth experience there was really meaningful. The itineraries that offer the most wildlife are most commonly Spitsbergen or Svalbard, which is an archipelago north of Norway. Those itineraries are particularly well known for the frequency of polar bear spottings, and seeing whales and species like walrus and seabirds. But also for the more curious traveler, just to the east is the Russian Arctic. So we have 2 trips going there, one to Novaya Zemlya, which means new land in Russian, and Franz Josef Land, an archipelago very similar to Svalbard. And these areas have some of the fewest visitor numbers in all of the Arctic. Sometimes less than 1,000 people a year are lucky enough to visit these areas, and they're just teeming with wildlife. Bear spottings are almost guaranteed, and that's a great voyage to choose for wildlife. We were one of the first companies to suspend our operations when the pandemic started, right in early March. And so we have committed to not restarting operations until May 2021 at the earliest. And we're very fortunate in that we're a leader in health and safety in our industry. We've always taken these factors very seriously. And so we're looking at every aspect. And I imagine that a company like Quark will be very well positioned to come back into operations in May. You know, the pandemic is still evolving. We're investing heavily in testing kits, but we're very optimistic that our operations will be able to resume, and that we'll be able to provide actually even better experiences for those who travel with us.
All right, you guys, it's time for a quick travel trivia question. Antarctica is home to the world's largest what? The answer when we return. Come with me to rediscover the world on Traveling with Denella Ri'chard at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Did you get it? Now the answer may sound a bit strange, but Antarctica is home to the world's largest desert. That's right, desert. Made of snow, of course, and not sand, it's called a desert because its entire annual rainfall can be less than a quarter inch. The Antarctic desert covers the entire continent of Antarctica, which is a size of about 5.5 million square miles. The second largest desert in the world is the Arctic, which is 5.4 million miles. It rarely rains or snows in either, and when snow does fall, it doesn't melt and builds up over many years to make giant ice sheets.
When people come to Antarctica, it's not uncommon for them to feel like it is a dream. When you ask someone, describe your experience. What is it like to be here? They'll say things like, is this real? For the first couple of days, everything is vivid. You're visiting an area that is equally marine and mountain. And this creates an incredible experience as well as an incredible natural dynamic to witness. As you sit in a zodiac, floating at sea, near seals, near penguins, ice in almost every direction, giving that feeling of pure wilderness. As a traveler, maybe you do research on what it is like to be in Antarctica. You learn about a few sites, wildlife, history,
and you've got to leave the ship.
And it begins to build your frame of reference about this place. And then you get here. It's so brilliant that those pieces of information that you gathered are completely washed over by the immediacy of the experience of being here. The cold on your face, the unbelievable visual features of the landscape, how the ice seems to be lit from within. One thing that people who visit Antarctica are left with is a desire to return to that experience, to return to that feeling of being close to something so wild, even at its most raw and severe moments, to be taken away with it.
I also had a chance to catch up with my good friend Carlos Ramirez from Quark Expeditions. Tell us about Quark Expeditions and what you guys do.
So Quark Expeditions has been around for 3 decades now, and for the 3 decades we've been focusing all of our trips in the polar regions, so Arctic and Antarctic, top of the world, bottom of the world, and that's all we do. And we are the specialists when it comes to polar adventures.
So what is this polar travel? I'm hearing more about it. I'm seeing it in magazines. I'm seeing people, stake their claim on the North Pole and, put on their cool parkas. And, and this polar travel is cool. So what exactly is it, Carlos?
By sheer numbers, polar travel is one of the fastest growing areas of travel most recently. I think every company now has some type of ship that they're building or some type of interest in expedition travel to the polar regions. What makes Quark different and special is the fact that we have a very diverse fleet of vessels, all under 200 passengers. So you talk about being small, this is as small as it gets. 200 passengers, all under 200 passengers, and we get you into the heart of the location, whether it's North Pole or Spitsbergen or Antarctica. We're getting you right on land or on ice or on the water, right in front of these incredible sights and sounds, and incredible wildlife as well.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit more about these destinations that you visit. So what are some of the destinations or itineraries, places? Where do you go?
So looking at the map of the world, the Arctic is obviously the top of the world, and it's comprised of several areas in the top of the world. So starting from the US and Canada, north of Canada is the Canadian High Arctic, where we have trips that will start in Toronto, and then we take you on a charter flight over to Resolute, and then you start your adventure there. We have trips that take you through eastern Greenland, as well as trips that combine Iceland, southern Greenland, eastern or western Greenland. North of Norway, we also have the Svalbard archipelago, and this archipelago is comprised of obviously several islands, but the largest island is Spitsbergen. And in Spitsbergen, we fly you into Longyearbyen, which is a mining town, and you start your adventure there. So we discover Spitsbergen up there, and Spitsbergen is also called the realm of the polar bear. There's more polar bears than people living on this particular island. Although polar bears are pretty you can see them pretty much anywhere in the Arctic. The highest likelihood of finding a polar bear in its natural habitat will be in Spitsbergen. And then also a trip that is once in a lifetime, I think, is the trip to the geographic North Pole. Quark for 30 years now has been taking clients up to the geographical North Pole. So up to last year, we completed our 62nd successful trip to the North Pole. We were actually the first company to take clients to the North Pole, and you do it in the most incredible piece of hardware, which is a nuclear power icebreaker that takes you to the North Pole.
All right, you guys, it's trivia time again. Now, which famous polar region animal will you not find in Antarctica? The answer when we return.
The time is here now, so come with me. Hey, throw your hand in the air right now. These are the good times. Hey, what are you feeling good times? These are the good times. Yo, these are the good times. Let's make this song real thing. These are the good times. Hey, yo, the good times. Hey,
Are you ready for a vacation? For your chance to win a 7-night stay at Couples Resorts Jamaica, go to travelingwithdenella.com right now. Come with me to rediscover the world on Traveling with Denella Ri'chard at 10 a.m. on Sundays.
To book your vacation, contact your magical vacation planner today.
You think you know the answer? It's a good one. Well, the answer is the polar bear. That's right. They're the largest land carnivores in the Arctic. Since they spend their lives on the sea ice, they have to constantly move as it moves, which is why global warming is shrinking their habitat. Their favorite food is the ringed seal, which they eat a lot of in the winter after the ice has frozen. So I know you and I had talked before about when you went to Spitsbergen. Did I say it right?
Spitsbergen, yes.
Yes, so tell me about your experience in Spitsbergen as a first-timer out there. What was that like?
So it all started with the city of Oslo. It's just a gorgeous city. If you're into history and museums, you land in Oslo, and you have museums like the Viking Museum, the Kon-Tiki Museum. So many museums, so much rich history, as well as great food scene. Very modern city. So you get the best of both worlds, and that kind of like starts your adventure, and then all of a sudden we transfer you over. You have the option of coming in and just going straight to the airport, but I normally try to stay at least one day in Oslo. So then you drive over, or you take the train over to the airport, and when you get to the airport, you're greeted by Marcelo and Eileen, who were our ground people, and just welcoming faces with the blue polos, and that's where your adventure starts, because then you're basically taken onto the tarmac on almost a private plane. It's a charter plane that we take only our guests from Oslo to the city of Longyearbyen, which is in Spitsbergen. It's the main city, and Spitsbergen was a mining town, and so that's how Spitsbergen was founded. But once you get to Spitsbergen, as you're coming in, depending on how the weather is, you feel like you're landing on the moon or somewhere distant. Just this beautiful mountain range of snow-capped mountains, and then just dark soil, and then greenery with in certain areas that like the moss is starting to grow. So it's just this incredible array of colors, and the excitement of seeing this mountain range, and then all of a sudden the plane dips down and you land, and that's where the excitement starts, because within 10 minutes you're already on the ship. So it's about a 10-minute bus ride from the airport to the ship, and you get on, and we have our first talk on board, and we start our adventure.
That sounds amazing, Carlos. So obviously we're sitting distance because we're living in what I call a COVID era, right
Yes.
now. So how does that impact what you guys do? Like, what is the season for polar travel? Like, when does it start? So if I want to go, when is that?
So for Quark Expeditions, our season will begin again in May of next year. So we normally run May to October for the Arctic, and we're going there during the summer, so when it's the warmest. Beginning of the season in the Arctic, lots of ice, lots of ice sheets and fast-moving ice, and you're starting to see a little bit of the melting, and that's the highest likelihood of you finding a polar bear in its natural habitat will be that May, June, and July season, because you're starting to see the polar bears going hunting for seal, and the best way for them to catch their food is by being on that fast-moving ice and going in and out of seal holes. And that's the Arctic season. For Antarctica, we normally start late November through late April. So we do have a natural pause in our operations where we don't operate at all, and that's why we're so specific with our polar trips, because that's all we do. We decide to just shut it down, not operate, send everybody home to their families and retrain and get everything ready for our next season.
Wow. And how have you guys dealt with the COVID environment, if you will, in terms of health safety protocols so that people, for those that are thinking about that at home, if they're thinking they want to travel with you guys in May, but they want to know, what are those health and safety protocols?
So health and safety is number one for Quark Expeditions. I believe we're the leaders in health and safety. So at any moment when we're breaking something down, any process that we're looking at, we have plans A through E for everything. And I think that's what we have done for the new normal, as they call it, and COVID. And so, dating back to the beginning of this period with the COVID period, we chose to err on the side of safety. We had one more ship could have gone out in Antarctica, and we decided, out of Ushuaia, we decided, we're going to err on the side of safety. We're not going to send the ship out because there's just so much uncertainty. We had one more ship that was sitting in the Bay of Ushuaia. They went through their quarantine period. Everybody got back. Luckily for us, we didn't have one COVID case on our ships during that period. And then we had the hard decision of deciding, all right, are we going to run this Arctic season, this past Arctic season? And we said, you know what? I think there's just too much uncertainty. Let's err on the side of safety. We're not going to make our clients happy, but at the end of the day, we did have compensation and things like that we took care of our clients. But at the end of the day, we didn't want to put anybody in harm's way. So pause that season, fast forward to this coming season, which was the Antarctica season. We decided, you know what, we're going to do the same thing. And so now we're not going to operate till May of next year. And when we do operate in May of next year, we're going to be focusing on obviously the health of our crew and our guests, the cleanliness of our ships, having all the right protocols in place, whether it's, pre-testing, post-testing, during testing. We're going to be going through and looking at all the procedures that, organizations like CLIA, and then the organizations that we're really close with, which is IACO and IATO, which are the organizations that manage travel to these regions, making sure that, like we always say, that all we leave behind is our footsteps and nothing else. And so we will be taking a look at everything. We have the plans in place, but as you know, there's a lot of trial sailings that will be running, early in January and February with all our larger companies that we will be looking at. And the best thing about Quark is that we will be able to then replicate or choose the best of both worlds, basically seeing what companies are doing best and then replicating, those processes.
Awesome, definitely. So Carlos, I'm sitting here thinking and, just thinking about the amazing adventures that you've been talking about. What is one of your favorite photos that you've taken?
I think I have a photo and a video. So my favorite video is one of an activity that everybody has to do, everybody should do. It's called a polar plunge. And so once a trip...
That sounds cold.
Very cold. So once a trip, we make an announcement and we ask everybody to put on your bathing suits. We start pumping music. Some people decide to maybe have some liquid elixirs to get them going. And what we do is we make an announcement and we say, all right, everybody come to the gangway. We're going to do the polar plunge. And so you come down the gangway. We have a Zodiac set up. We put a tether around your waist. And you go at your leisure. 1, 2, 3, go. And some people decide to go sideways. Some people decide to flip. There was one cool guy that tried to swim to the other Zodiac. But once you hit that water, it's absolutely amazing. And I gotta say that if you ever do it, you have to do the polar plunge, because then you come back and you get this really nice patch that says you did the polar plunge, and then you get this incredible picture, because all of our pictures are included as part of our trip. So we have a professional photographer that takes 2 photos of you going into the water. And so you come back out, but I was the only one that wore a GoPro on my chest. And so I'm screaming, and I was just so cold and so excited that I nearly walked out with the tether around my waist back to my room. And I forgot to hit stop on my GoPro, and it ended up recording like 15 minutes of just me, of excitement and me high-fiving everybody. So pretty exciting.
Our guest this week came from Quark Expeditions, and I really enjoyed hearing their stories and discovering what it's like to be there in the polar regions. And I hope you did too. Come with me to rediscover the world on Traveling with Denella Ri'chard at 10 a.m. on Sundays. The polar regions are still a mystery for many of us, and this area is getting smaller every year due to global warming. So if you've been dreaming of visiting this part of the world, then I highly recommend you add it to your 2021 or 2022 travel bucket list. Well, it's time for me to go, but I'll see you same place, same time next week. The more I travel the world, the more I appreciate how our similarities far exceed our differences. We are all so much the same in the way we laugh, we cry, and the way we love. For each person I can inspire to travel, to experience a different culture and yet appreciate our kinship, we are one step closer to eradicating the ugliness of racism and discrimination, so we can elevate the beauty in discovering our shared humanity.